Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today we're looking at the 2014 to 2015 series Batman Eternal, part of DC's The New 52. As my viewers should well know, Batman first debuted in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939. With the New 52 lasting more or less from 2011 to 2016, that means the B-Man's 75th anniversary fell during that time period. And for an anniversary of that magnitude, there's no way DC wasn't planning something big from almost the beginning of the New 52. Which would be extra believable because what we got for that anniversary was this series, Batman Eternal. A full 52 issues of Batman comics released once a week for an entire year, focusing on exploring the lives of Batman's allies and facing him off against many of his greatest enemies. Eternal would be a nearly non-stop adventure that weaved together threads that had been building since the very beginning of the New 52 in basically every Bat-themed comic DC put out during that time period, which includes all the Bat family titles like Batgirl, Batwing, Nightwing, Teen Titans, Batwoman, Catwoman, and Red Hood and the Outlaws, all of which I've covered, except Red Hood. I swear I'll cover it someday. Honest. So that's a lot of different stories being tied together under one title, which is probably why they needed 52 issues to do it. And also why they needed this massive team of writers and artists to keep the project going on schedule for an entire year. So expect to see very little continuity in the art styles. But hey, that's nothing new for the New 52. So let's see what a story 75 years in the making has in store for us, and take this away. The comic opens on the end of everything. The city is in ruins, all the Avengers are dead. Wait a minute. Sorry, wrong script. I meant the city is on fire, all of Batman's compatriots are dead, and Batman has been defeated and tied to what might be the Bat Signal, while a villain monologues about how they managed to do all of this to Batman. Try to remember that this is how the comic opens, because I'll be honest, I completely forgot this was where we started by the time I finished reading. Taking 52 issues to get back to this point will do that to you. Anyway, as I pointed out, that's about 52 weeks ahead here, so let's jump back to day 1, which opens on Lieutenant Jason Bard arriving in Gotham, with dialogue that seems to be an homage to Gordon first arriving in Gotham in Batman Year 1. So fittingly, Bard is quoting Gordon here, because Bard is a Detroit cop handpicked by Gordon for his impressive record to head up the night shift for the Major Crimes Unit in the GCPD, which was Gordon's old job, as we're told by Lieutenant Forbes, that guy from Finch's The Dark Knight series. Told ya he'd be back, and still singing his one-note song of Gordon is the problem. He'll be singing that song a lot in this series. Gordon's not at the station to meet Bard because he's busy across town dealing with Professor Pig. Pig's back as well. I'm really gonna have to stop saying that because, man, everyone is back in this. Pig kidnapped a bunch of children, probably to make them into his creepy Dollatron things, but with Batman's help, they quickly shut Pig down. Pig and his men try to run away, including a new lackey named Derek Grady. While Batman goes after Pig, Gordon follows Grady into the subway, or metro for you Europeans out there, where he corners him. Gordon demands that Grady drop his gun, but when he refuses, Gordon attempts to shoot it out of his hand, which honestly seems like an odd thing to do. Who shoots the weapon and not the person? But whatever. Even weirder, the bullet passes right through the gun and hits a junction box behind Grady, which then proceeds to explode like it's a barrel in a first-person shooter. This kills Grady and sets 2 trains on a collision course because the trains are still running despite Gordon having already called in earlier to have them shut down. Typical government quality. Batman manages to pull Gordon off the tracks before the crash can happen, but he can't stop the crash itself. We'll learn later that hundreds are dead and even more injured because of this. But still able to tell that this was obviously a disaster, Forbes takes Gordon into custody, blaming him for the crash after firing on an unarmed man and destroying that junction box. Because while Gordon did see a gun in Grady's hand, surveillance footage showed the man as unarmed. Suspicious. Gordon's left unsure of his own innocence, but Batman's immediate suspicions of a setup seems to be on the right track. Yeah? Too soon? Because freshly returned to Gotham is Carmine the Roman Falcone. Or is it Falcone? I think they called him Falcone in Batman Begins, and that's obviously an unquestionable source for name pronunciations. Carmine Falcone is an old Gotham mafia boss first introduced in Batman Year 1, though he arguably plays a more central role in The Long Halloween. In New 52 continuity, we will learn his history to be that he took over as kingpin of the Gotham mobs from a guy named Rex Calabrese, and then shortly after the Zero Year was forced to flee the city as Penguin began to take over. Batman discovers that Carmine fled to Hong Kong, where he battled for control of the city's underworld with the Ghost Dragons, a gang that once appeared in some old Robin comics, but we last saw them in the New 52 Detective Comics trying to kill Bruce Wayne at Penguin's request. Batman joins forces with the Batman of Japan to investigate and confront the leader of the Ghost Dragons, Shin Fong. But what they don't realize is they've unwittingly stepped into an operation for a British Secret Service agent that tries to keep Batman out of her way, only for her to end up getting stabbed in the back herself by Fong. Batman quickly subdues Shin Fong, and it doesn't take long before Shin's confessing that, despite the claim he's been making, he didn't defeat Falcone. Instead, Falcone bought him out, letting Shin Fong run Hong Kong's underworld as long as he continued to send Falcone a very large cut of the profits. Batman returns to Gotham then, the British Secret Service agent in tow, because turns out she's none other than Julia Pennyworth, Alfred's daughter. He has a daughter, apparently. Julia, who they'll claim is part of the British Special Reconnaissance Regiment, is apparently very angry at her father for having left her to go be a butler for some rich bloke halfway across the planet. When she wakes up, bandaged together by her father in Wayne Manor, she initially refuses to even speak to her dad, and when she finally starts talking to him, it's mostly just to fight with him. And she even attempts to leave before being fully healed. We'll be seeing plenty more of her, so for now, back to the story. Carmine's goal in Gotham is to retake control over the city for normal people, believing it to have fallen to bats, birds, jokers, and other costumed crazies. To do this, he immediately flexes his influence over Gotham Mayor Sebastian Haddie, and the two appoint that a-hole Forbes to be interim commissioner following Gordon's arrest. Because Forbes doesn't just remember how the city was when it was run by the mob, he prefers it that way. With Forbes in charge, he turns the entire GCPD's focus towards the elimination of a single target, Batman. As Falcone goes to war against the Penguin, Batman continues to try his normal efforts of stopping the mobsters, but Forbes refuses to arrest any of them, and they're just back on the streets immediately. With the police in his pocket, Carmine seems to be winning the war, especially after he sinks the Iceberg Lounge altogether, but he didn't account for Jason Bard. Bard immediately sets himself apart from the rest of the force, fostering a relationship with Gotham Gazette reporter Vicky Vale, and expressing discontent over Forbes' policy to release criminals back on the street. So he teams up with Harvey Bullock and Captain Maggie Sawyer, who joined the GCPD in the Batwoman series, to start undermining Forbes. Claiming to go after a cache of Batman Incorporated weapons, they instead bust one of Falcone's hideouts. And with Vicky Vale at the GCPD when all the men are brought in for processing, Forbes realizes he can't just turn armed criminals back on the street in front of the press. Things really come to a head when someone slips Penguin Falcone's location, and the Bird heads to the spot to get revenge on the mob boss himself. Only this was a trap, and Bard and Vicky catch the two fighting, leading to arresting them both and bringing an end to the mob war. It'll turn out that it was Bard who slipped the info to Penguin, the first indicator that Bard has a secret as well. While Batman was focused on dealing with the Roman, Batgirl was focused on clearing her father's name. Refusing to believe the commissioner to be guilty, she notices a suspicious man in the surveillance footage from the subway. He's identified as Brazilian actor Gonzalo Dominguez, so she immediately heads down to Brazil, where she finds Gonzalo the subject of an attack from Scorpiana, the deadly assassin we met in Batman Incorporated, and fittingly El Gaucho shows up to help put an end to her evil ways. When Batgirl confronts Gonzalo about what he was doing in Gotham, he claims he was never there at all, but that in order to pay a debt to a group called the Club of Villains, he let a doctor named Manga Ravite make a copy of his face. Red Hood joins Batgirl here, sent by Batman, who was worried that Batgirl was too close to this to think clearly. And we just really needed to find some way to shove Jason Todd into this story. Maybe to help make clear that Jason Bard is in fact a different character. So BG and RH track down this manga revite only to find Batwoman already dealing with him. She tracked him down for the DEO, as I guess she was still working for them at this point in her series. Because manga revite's boss has been trafficking in stolen villain tech. His boss is a guy calling himself Dr. Falsario, who runs a sweatshop making knockoff Batman toys, or Mr. Vampire Hero toys, which is obviously a better name anyway. So the three vampire heroes attack the sweatshop in order to confront Falsario. Batgirl learns he did steal Gonzalo's face, though the plastic surgery has gone bad, giving him a more freakish appearance. He also had stolen Hatter tech that allows him to brainwash and control people, which is how he brainwashed Gordon to see the gun in Grady's hand. Unfortunately, someone kills Falsario before Batgirl can capture him. But Batman did manage to download his files and has more than enough evidence now to clear Gordon's name. So Batman gives the info to Bard, who is now interim commissioner since Forbes was tied to the Roman and was taken down alongside him. Bard promises to immediately get Gordon cleared, but instead we see Gordon getting found guilty in his trial and sentenced to serve multiple life sentences in Blackgate. Inside Blackgate, he's put with a cellmate named Leo, like the lion. And he's there when Penguin and Falcone are also put away. The two mob bosses continue their little war inside the prison, creating a riot. Gordon attempts to intervene in the riot to save the lives of some of the officers, but the riot really comes to an end when Leo reveals that he's actually also a vampire hero? No, he's actually just former mob boss Rex Calabrese. The teeth is just a weird thing he does, I guess? I mean, it never comes up again, but I'm sure it was important somehow. Rex was supposed to be dead, but he's obviously not, and apparently having a guilty conscience over all the terrible things he had done in order to become a mafia kingpin, allowed himself to be put in jail and stays there lost and forgotten. Falcone manages to get himself extradited back to Hong Kong, but before he goes, Batman interrogates him about the setup on Gordon, only to learn that Falcone was never behind that to begin with. He simply received an invitation to come to Gotham because Gordon was going to fall, and the mobster had decided to take advantage of that situation, meaning there's another mastermind behind all of this. Dun dun dun! So when Bard finally does show up to Blackgate to get a prisoner released, it's not Gordon. Instead, it's a guy named Zachary Gate, also called the Architect. The Architect is from a Batman pre-New 52 miniseries called The Gates of Gotham, written by Scott Snyder in one of his first Batman stories. Once freed, Zach shows up to destroy Beacon Tower, one of the major construction projects of the Gotham Revitalization Plan introduced in the New 52 Batman. Batman stops Gates immediately, but Gates reveals that he's only working for someone else, and Batman finally connects the dots of everything that's been going on to realize who the true mastermind behind everything has to be: Hush. Hush was introduced in the landmark story named for him as a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne named Tommy Elliott. Tommy was obsessed with Bruce, wanting to be exactly like him, to the point that he wanted to be him. He even cut the brake lines on his own parents' car so that he could also be an orphan like Bruce. In his namesake story, he manipulated a number of Gotham villains against Batman, very similar to what has been happening so far in this series, which is what has convinced Bruce that Tommy is the true villain here. Hush had actually appeared just before this, when he broke into Wayne Manor and injected Alfred with a version of Scarecrow's fear toxin. Julia called for an ambulance, but before Alfred left, he told her a secret about the grandfather clock. Following his clue, Julia discovers that her father is much more than a butler. He's a hell of a butler. Plus, fighting a war on crime and stuff. So Julia's also quickly pulled in by Batman to fill Alfred's role, and Bat takes to calling her Penny 2, having been calling Alfred Penny 1 since the start of the New 52. So very cute. Hush's real purpose behind attacking Alfred turns out to have been to steal some blood from him, as Batman has a number of weapon caches hidden around the city, and they're all DNA locked. With Alfred's DNA in hand, Hush is able to get into the caches and mess with them. We also learn that Jason Bard has been working for Hush this whole time. And under Tommy's orders, Bard pushes the mayor into declaring martial law in Gotham. To help convince the mayor, Bard sends some officers to one of these weapon caches, and Hush blows up up both them and the cache. Since these caches were created as part of Batman Incorporated, Wayne Enterprises is implicated as being at fault for the danger these weapon piles present. Batman decides it's too much of a risk to leave them lying around and to destroy them himself in a less dangerous way. Julia joins him on this quest, but Hush interrupts her at one of the caches before she can finish destroying it. He shoots her in the gut and plants another bomb that causes another deadly explosion, though Julia does manage to get away. She's getting hit in the gut a lot though. Batman eventually catches up with Hush at one of the caches, and finally face to face, it doesn't take Bruce long to defeat his former friend in battle. But with the potential danger of more caches possibly exploding, the government seizes Wayne Enterprises and all of its holdings, which will leave Bruce bankrupt and Batman without his corporate backing. What's worse, Bat finds in Hush's coat an identical invite to the one Falcone had, meaning that after all of this, Hush also wasn't the true mastermind here. Dun dun dun. Which brings us to Arkham Asylum and Jim Corrigan. Jim is ex-GCPD and currently possessed by the Spectre, a living embodiment of the Wrath of God. His New 52 origins actually occurred in The Phantom Stranger, which I haven't covered yet, but I'll get there. Corrigan loops Batman in on the fact that he's detected strange supernatural activity at Arkham, but Batman, too busy at the time with the Falcone Penguin War, sends Batwing in his place. Luke Fox is talented with tech, but lacks knowledge of and experience with the supernatural, not really believing in any of it. That will quickly change inside Arkham, as the duo discover that the inmates are now running the place. One of the doctors, Achilles Milo, a version of old Batman villain Professor Milo, has been bringing the inmates down below the asylum to the Joker's daughter? JD honestly doesn't seem to have much to do with this story, just serving here as an intermediary between Milo and the true force behind the supernatural goings-on in Arkham. And it doesn't take Batwing and Corrigan long to discover that that force is Deacon Blackfire. Blackfire is another longtime Batman villain, of course, but here he's provided a new background as a preacher in Gotham that was trying to gain power in the city by building a flock of brainwashed followers, made susceptible to his ministrations through drugs mixed into the free food his church provided them. Back at some point in the past, he was able to capture Batman and attempted to convince his followers that Batman was a demon. But Batman was able to turn Blackfire's flock, and they proceeded to just beat the Deacon to death. But from the afterlife, Blackfire managed to open a doorway from hell in an effort to resurrect himself, and the Arkham inmates provided him with the body of Maxi Zeus to be a vessel for his return. His presence has created a massive shifting tunnels below Arkham, filled with walking corpses of those Joker's daughter helped Blackfire sacrifice to power the spell. Those corpses capture Corrigan and Batwing, but this ignites the Spectre inside of Corrigan and it erupts, sending a blast of energy straight up, destroying the asylum above. The Spectre then destroys all of the corpse things and completely shuts down Blackfire, severing his link to the land of the living. With Blackfire no longer powering the mystical energy under Arkham, the remains of the asylum simply collapse into the massive tunnel system he created down there. This proves to be a much less deadly disaster than you might expect though, as when Batman shows up to the disaster site, he immediately begins running into a number of escapees, including Joker's daughter, Mr. Freeze, Clayface, and Zsasz. Batman stops the super criminals, but with the police having arrived and still locked on shutting down Batman, he's forced to flee, which is bad news as Tommy Elliott, in his role as surgeon, had the incapacitated Alfred moved from the hospital that he was being treated at to Arkham Asylum, which happened just before it collapsed. Alfred gets trapped under rubble in the collapsed asylum, but he's freed by Bane of all people. But it's not for heroic reasons. Instead, he just wants a sacrificial puppet to watch his back as he attempts to escape from the ruins. Alfred manages to earn Bane's respect though when he deftly deals with some of the leftovers of Blackfire's zombies. And so the butler leads Bane to one of the not destroyed bat caches, disabling the luchador with some gas and allowing Alfred to rejoin the team. Batwing was also trapped in the rubble of Arkham, but once he's been been recovered, he reveals a coded message he found in Riddler's cell. When they finally decipher that message, it implies Riddler knows who the real mastermind behind all of this is. Following another cipher they find, Batman tracks Riddler to the mountains outside of Gotham, but Nigma refuses to tell Batman what he knows, saying he's already given the correct clue in his first message. But in the fallout of dealing with Hush, Bruce Wayne loses just about everything. With Arkham Asylum shut down, the city decides to turn Wayne Manor into the new home for the criminally insane, and Bruce is forced to give up his childhood home. Also, with the government now having control of Wayne Enterprises, Lucius Fox agrees to work with Jason Bard to shut down Batman. Since Lucius designed all of the Bat tech, he's able to give control of the Batmobile to Bard, who attempts to get Batman to either surrender or die in a car crash. Batman, of course, doesn't surrender, and also, of course, survives the crash. But the rest of the GCPD is disgusted by Bard's actions and turn on him. At this point, Vicky Vale, who has realized something is going on with Bard, has traveled to Detroit to learn about Bard's past. Apparently, shortly after Batman first became public, he inspired an imitator in Detroit. Only this knockoff was clueless and unskilled, and his interference on a bust caused Bard's partner to be killed. Bard had been madly in love with her, and while overwhelmed by grief, he was approached by Tommy Elliot, who enlisted his help in seeking revenge on Batman. Kinda can't help but wonder if the knockoff Batman was Elliot to begin with in order to create this situation, but they don't go into it. Red Robin, meanwhile, has spent most of the story following his own lead. Following Pig's attack at the beginning, a number of the children that Pig had kidnapped fell sick. But this isn't a normal virus. Red Robin quickly discovers that it's a nanotech virus. Among those that end up infected is Cullen Rowe, brother of Harper Rowe, who we met in the New 52 Batman. She sneaks her way into Tim's investigation of the nanovirus, stowing her way on his flight to Japan to visit Sergei Alexandrov, one of Bruce's instructors on the way to him becoming Batman, as we saw in a flashback also from Snyder's Batman series. Alexandrov admits that the nanotech is his design, but insists it has been modified and used by someone else. Tim gets annoyed at having to try to deal with Harper, who Alexandrov insists should join him, but he does seem to start training her. Eventually, they manage to track the source of the nanovirus down to a factory where all the infected children are being controlled and made to work on building something. Just a note here, this makes for our second child sweatshop of the series. I'm sure that's of no particular importance. Just happening to note that. The shop is run by Jervis Tetch, the Mad Hatter, who may finally be the mastermind behind all of this, with the goal of gaining control of all the citizens of Gotham through his nanotechnology. Red Robin calls in Batgirl, by now having switched to her Burnside getup, and Red Hood, still just red and hooded, to help him shut Tetch down. But Tetch infects them with the nanotech and takes control of them as well. Harper, who Tim forced to stay behind, is left as the only person who both knows what is going on and has any hope of stopping it. So she builds herself a special suit that allows her to be resistant to the nanotech and goes in to save everyone. Hatter manages to subdue her with his mind-controlled heroes, but Harper appeals to his vanity, complimenting him on the impressive tech Tetch has built, and that gets his guard down just enough for her to get his mind control hat away from him. She pops it on her own head, and yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Harper. It does look much better on you. Looking schmancy. She uses the hat to destroy the mind control machine all the child drones have been building, disrupting Hatter's control over the nanotech and freeing everybody. Batman shows up just in time to see the end result and learn that Hatter, too, received an invitation. You're not getting another dun-dun-dun out of me, you've lost your privilege! That brings us to Catwoman. Catwoman gets pulled into the story thanks to her connection to Carmine Falcone. Seems she stole from him when she realized his empire was going to crumble, and even scarred his face with her claws. But she appears little in the Falcone arc. Instead, her main focus is around a letter she finds on the grave of Lola McIntyre, her fence that died in the first arc of the New 52 Catwoman. The letter informs her that she, Selina Kyle, is the daughter of Rex Calabrese, that classic Gotham mob boss that Falcone inherited the mob from, as I mentioned earlier. After Falcone's failed return, a young girl named Jade, who runs supplies to Rex inside the prison, reunites Selina with her estranged father. Rex wants Selina to take up his old banner and unite the mobs as the new kingpin. She's not initially interested, not wanting anything to do with her father, who had never never been there for her, but that Jade Girl is eventually caught by social services and reunited with her scumbag of an uncle. Scum Uncle then sells Jade to Bone, that yellow bastard wannabe from Catwoman's first New 52 arc, and the guy who killed Lola. Bone is still pissed at Catwoman for humiliating him, and despite her beating him twice, he still wants her dead. Using Jade, he manages to get the drop on Catwoman, then ties her up on a stage and sells tickets to people to watch him beat her to death. Jade is also there, which is bad news for everyone because Croc has been looking for her. It seems Croc has been protecting a number of people who had been living in the Gotham underground, that city beneath Gotham City that we saw in Catwoman and Batwing. That included Jade, who Croc is particularly protective of, and finally managing to track her down to Bone's nightclub, he attacks the place, setting off a ballroom blitz. In the chaos, Bone demands that Jade's sleazebag uncle just shoot Catwoman dead, even though Sleazy Sleazerton isn't a good shot. He finally tries anyway, not realizing that Jade was also on the stage attempting to free Selina, and he accidentally shoots the kid instead. Jade tragically dies, leaving both Catwoman and Croc devastated over the loss. Batman attempts to comfort Selina, but he's been pushing her away the whole story, and she realizes she can't rely on him. She also realizes that if she had listened to Rex earlier, she could have taken control of the crime families and prevented all of this mess. So she finally decides to accept her destiny and become the new kingpin of crime after all. She sets up a literally underground casino she calls the Egyptian, and takes Croc on as her personal bodyguard. Using the influence this new position gives her, she's able to track down and capture Stephanie Brown. Stephanie first appeared in the story headed to her father's house, as her mom and dad were separated, and she left something at her dad's place. The door is suspiciously locked, so she sneaks her way in, only to find her dad in the middle of a cosplay party. How embarrassing. Oh, no. Wait, these are actual supervillains. As you know, if you're familiar with Stephanie from the before times, her father is the supervillain Cluemaster, a sort of off-brand Riddler. Here he's teamed up with a number of other less impressive villains including Signalman, Ratcatcher, Prankster, Lockup, and Firefly. And as a group, they'll slowly add to the general chaos of the city by doing things like backing up sewers and messing with the timing on traffic lights. Real top tier level villain stuff, obviously. When Stephanie accidentally walks in on their villains night, they knock her out and threaten to kill her. She manages to get away, but doesn't know where to turn. She first tries to contact her mom, but her mom just seems to sell her out to her father, who shoot up the payphone she kept using to call home. Payphones apparently still exist in Gotham. Even Stephanie is surprised by that. Unable to hide with either parent, she begins living in the library like she's a Tenenbaum, and uses their computers to post on what had been her celebrity gossip blog, but is now supposed to reveal the information about her father and spoil his plans. She's quickly shown to be very clever, even leading her own father into a trap with the state police, while dressed in a costume of her own, the New 52 version of her spoiler outfit, so that these state cops can arrest him, because she realizes the city police were probably in his pocket. But when she sneaks into the police station he's being held in to reveal to him that she's going to post all of his plans on her blog, the post gets changed to a bounty put on her head, resulting in a number of supervillains coming after her, including our old pal Flamingo, who's still alive in this continuity. She's finally captured by Catwoman, and Batman and Harper, now going by Bluebird, break into the Egyptian to free her, wanting to know what it is that she knows that's put this bounty on her head. Stephanie won't talk to Batman though, because as it turns out, while observing her father to find out what he's up to, she thought she learned that the true mastermind behind everything was Bruce Wayne. What? With that obviously not being the case, Bruce decides that it's really Ra's al Ghul who's the true mastermind and travels across the world to confront him, giving us another appearance of Lord Deathman, so that's fun. But Ra's confesses he also received an invitation and ignored it, because he's convinced he can take down Batman without whatever this is going on. When Batman returns home, he finds that all the supervillains of Gotham City have somehow been given carte blanche with money and tech enough to do whatever they want. All of Batman's Batman's allies that have shown up already attempt to stop these villains with little success, but Batman quickly goes from one to the next, taking them down like Mega Man bosses. Amidst this chaos, another invitation is sent out, this time for Batman to head to Beacon Tower. That place I've mentioned a couple times earlier, and at the top of it, the bat signal has been installed. That brings us pretty much back to the opening. Did you remember it like I told you to? When Batman arrives at the top of the tower, he's knocked out, and the true mastermind is finally revealed to be Cluemaster. It was Cluemaster all along. It seems that several years earlier, Cluemaster had the revelation that he and his villain friends could do whatever they wanted while Batman was busy focusing on bigger threats. So that was the goal here. If they gave Batman a puzzle filled with all of his villains, he'd be so focused on figuring out which mega-level threat could be doing all of this that he would simply overlook the small fries like Cluemaster and his pals. And he was right, apparently. Bruce tries to fight back against Cluemaster, but he's simply too exhausted by this point, and Cluemaster easily gets the better of him. But just before he can deliver the killing blow to Batman and become a major level villain himself, his throat is slit. Because we have one more major mastermind revealed to do. But this is the last one, I swear. Turns out, Stephanie was kind of right in that it wasn't Bruce Wayne behind Cluemaster, it was Thomas Wayne Jr., aka Lincoln March, aka Owlman. So all of this started with the Night of the Owls. Back on that night, Cluemaster finally followed the clues left around Gotham by the court, the ones we saw young Bruce following after his parents' murder, to track down the home base of the Court of Owls. He came to them to ask for funding to pull off his ultimate plan to destroy Batman, but he arrived just a little too late, as he arrived after Lincoln March had killed everybody there, discovering the same room of dead court members Bruce would find in that story just a little bit later. But he was earlier than Batman, as Lincoln March was still there, and March decided to go ahead and listen to Cluemaster's plan. And while the initial idea may have been Arthur's, I think it's pretty clear that it was March that made everything possible. Not only did Lincoln provide the money to make it all happen, he was most likely the one ninjaing around tying up loose ends, like killing Dr. Fulsario before he could talk. March attempts to take Bruce on another jetpack tour of Gotham, but Bruce is not interested this time and uses some glass shards from his own back to break March's jetpack. They crash in Gotham Square, where March references the 0 year and talks about how, now that he's killed Cluemaster and his men, once he kills Bruce, no one will ever know who was truly responsible for everything happening, and the city will destroy itself in the chaos. Only by this point, overcome with the guilt of all he had done, Bard finally did the right thing and cleared Gordon's name, getting the former commissioner released from Blackgate. And the first thing Gordon does is light up the sky with bat symbols, and get on the radio to tell the citizens of Gotham that for this one night, everyone needs to be Batman. March dismisses this as pointless, but then all of Batman's allies show up to help him out, even Stephanie Brown, the Birds of Prey, and Talon, in what will probably be his last appearance ever. Realizing his plans were somewhat spoiled, March simply ducks into the sewer and runs away. Batman says they need to go after him, but Gordon convinces him to take it easy for just this one night. We'll see that March is eventually captured by the Court of Owls, or what remains of them, and disappointed by his actions, they refreeze him and lock him away, to make potential use of him again sometime in the future. There's some resolution following this. Bard attempts to rekindle his relationship with Vale, offering her his full story. Corrigan mentions starting the department that we'll see in Gotham by midnight. Stephanie continues living with Harper and her brother, where she had been living after being rescued from the Egyptian. And the really weird hint of a relationship between Batgirl and Red Hood is thankfully brought to a conclusion and dismissed. BG can do so much better than that guy. But overall, that pretty much wraps this up, so let's finally get to the breakdown. I have to admit, this story is pretty epic, which is why I went ahead and made this such a long video. It's worth it to get the whole story. I greatly appreciate how much this ties in everything from all the various New 52 Bat Family titles with no egos. Not a single title was considered unworthy of notice, and that makes this story feel like such an immense reward for anyone who slogged through that mess. Like me. I have the receipts to prove it. Sure, the story could have been done quicker, and there were some moments that felt unnecessary. Also, the way it often jumped from one story to another, literally every 2 pages, could frequently mean that the information we were getting when checking into one of the storylines was just recap, slowing things down further. And it was annoying having to roll through mastermind after mastermind. But honestly, I love that it gave each different mastermind a chance to breathe, a chance to be the focus of the story for a while, to help build that paranoia that something bigger was happening, even while it was frustrating to have that constant Scooby-Doo reveal of one mask under another. Honestly, the only real complaint I could see leveling at this story was the drastically inconsistent art, which led to plenty of art styles that someone might find jarring or even downright bad. But even that, I think, is excusable considering how quickly this comic was coming out. So I'm giving this series a recommendation level of very high. It's hard not to see this as anything but a fantastic way to celebrate Batman's 75th anniversary, and everyone should be able to get something out of this epic story. The collected editions get 1 Dr. Falsario Face, 1 Julia Pennyworth, and 1 Harper in a top hat. Still so schmancy. That's moving from bad to good, and yes, they really did manage to shove this all into only 3 volumes. So that breaks down like this. Volume 1 is clearly the best option here, containing an entire 21 issues and still having a large gallery of bonus art in the back, including alternate covers, sketch pages, and so many character and building concepts and designs. Volume 3 is still pretty good, having 18 issues of this series, plus issue 28 of the New 52 Batman that served as a Batman Eternal preview, and still adding in a couple pages of bonus art. Volume 2, though, is only 13 issues and contains about 5 or 6 pages of previews for the New 52 Catwoman arc and the Arkham Manor series that rolled out of Batman Eternal. Still honestly an impressive collection in its own right, but so unimpressive compared to the other 2. What are you even doing here, Volume 2? Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a long one, but I've been looking forward to covering this series for a long time, and I really wanted to do it justice. I hope it was worth it. We got one more New 52 Batman series to go, believe it or not, and then I plan on doing a very Marvel summer. So if you did enjoy this video, or you're just looking forward to that, or you're just a good person who likes to bring good cheer and happiness, then make sure to click the like and subscribe and all those things so you can help the channel out, and help yourself to make sure you can be here next time, and I hope to see you then, right here, in the Comic Cave.